Welcome back, everybody. This is Top 3, and I'm Marcia O'Connor, your host today. I am the CEO and founder of the O'Connor Group, and Top 3 is really for the entrepreneur out there who basically wants to hear how to do it well, and what do you learn from secrets, and what do you learn from mistakes. And today I've got a phenomenal guest, a friend of mine, Ian Meierdiercks, in the house with us today, and he is the founder of I Am Well. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcia. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I know, Ian, it's funny, you do wealth partners, and so funny, so many entrepreneurs, they all say that they take care of their finances well, and a lot of them don't. And I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and all too, but I want to know more about you because you too are an entrepreneur. You started your own business. What made you want to do that?
So, not to go back too far in the archives, but I do come from a pedigree of an entrepreneurial family. And the interesting thing about that is that I always told myself growing up, like, I'm never going to do this or I'm never going to do that because of what I saw. But I guess it just rubbed off. It's in my blood. Back a little bit, I have entrepreneurs on my dad's side. So, my grandfather, of like my father's father, he owned a marina with his brother that they started. Like, we're talking way back machines. So, they made boats. They were wood pattern makers back in the day. They had woodworking skills. They said, hey, we like the boat business, so now we're going to make boats out of wood. That then fast forwarded into, of course, this thing called fiberglass came along. So a guy shows up in his Cadillac one day and says, hey, why don't you sell these boats that I'm starting to make? And they became one of, if not the first Viking Yachts dealer. So if you're a boat person, you probably heard of Viking before. They're like kind of like the it or one of the its. So that's pretty cool on my dad's side. And then fast forward that story, my grandfather and his brother got in a little bit of a spat, let's say one day, and they kind of parted ways abruptly. And my dad sat there with his brother and said, oh, what are we going to do now? This is our career. So my dad was kind of a serial entrepreneur after that. He then went on to work at a company for a short time. And then he said, you know what? I think this personal computing thing might have legs to it. So he started selling something called Apple personal computers back in like the late 70s before everyone knew what an Apple was. So he then had a series of different companies after that. A lot of them were maybe 10 plus years ahead of their time. So he was kind of an entrepreneur that way. My mom's side, my grandmother, so my mom's mom, she was a seamstress growing up. So little tutus and other little ballet dresses for dance recitals. And then that kind of went into prom dresses and then eventually wedding dresses. And then one day she met these two fellas, the Klein brothers, who said, hey, you should go and buy the dresses and pay other people that work for you to alter them. So come to New York with us and we'll show you how to buy them. And you can be our first franchisee of this chain called Modern Bridal. Well, then after she learned about a year and a half into it, hey, you know what? I could do this for myself. And she bought out the franchise and that started her own business. And we're going back to like early 50s, like late 40s, she started, but early 50s. So she then went on to become one of the first tenants when they opened something called the King of Prussia Plaza, which I know a lot of people know. It used to be open air back then. So anyway, the very long short of it is that I have, that entrepreneurial blood. And then that kind of turned into my story.
That's so cool. It's so funny. When I was I am still part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I speak a lot about it on the show, and I really love meeting other entrepreneurs and their journeys. One of the forums I was involved with, one of our trips for the retreat, we actually went to see the Viking back end assembly process in New Jersey. And it was really quite fascinating to see how these yachts were being built from ground up. And
Crazy,
so it's
right?
really funny to hear what you're talking about. But I was like behind the scenes and saw it firsthand. And definitely it's a big endeavor, a yacht, because they're so customized. But it's really interesting what goes behind the scenes.
I'll do you one better. Quick story. About 5 years ago, we went down and saw the tour. It's Bill Healy is the fellow who started Viking Yachts. It's his son Pat who runs it now, as many people may know. So they knew that we were coming, and after the tour, Pat called whoever's giving us the tour and said, "Listen, Bill's here, and he wants to see you guys." Because he remembered, so he's kind of up in years and having some memory issues, but he remembered my grandfather. Like, they were said, hey, this is Wayne, this is Earl. He was calling my dad my grandfather's name because that's who he remembered, but he kind of we've put it together enough. So it was
That's
interesting. Very cool
awesome. That's
experience. Yeah.
so
Very cool.
exciting. So you started, I think it was like 2003, right? A long time ago.
Yeah. So, I always tell people I was a recovering engineer from Drexel,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't stand it, did my co-ops. And I think this is definitely like a pivot point to my story and how I ended up where I am. And I was one of those kids like in school, like I could pay attention, right? Didn't have great study habits, didn't put in a lot of effort. decent basketball player. Could have played a little bit in college. Not D1 college, but could have played, and just never really applied myself. So I get to school, and I'm doing this engineering thing and don't really love it, and I'm doing the co-op thing because I'm at Drexel. At Drexel, and one day I said, all right, you know what? I don't want to do this. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to break this news to my parents. So I have this whole script in my mind and all the research I did about changing my major and da da da. And I walk in on Saturday, and of course my mom's working because she's an entrepreneur and she's not home, but my dad's there. And in my head, I had the way this was going to go. I'm going to tell my dad what's going on, but I did all this research, and I have a plan here. And he starts pretty much laughing in my face after about 20 seconds, and I'm all thrown off. And I say, Dad, what are you laughing at? And he's looked at me. He said, hey pal, you're the one with the loans. Do whatever you want. To which I said, I didn't even know I had loans. So he proceeds to run downstairs, comes up with two pieces of paper, Sally Mae on one piece, note paper with my mom's writing different dates and pencil, pen, different colors. They were tracking all my expenses, and Sally Mae said 77,000 or whatever it was, somewhere around there. And then my mom had another 7,000 on top of that. And then he once again puts those pieces in front of me and then drops the mic as he's walking away and says, remember, do whatever you want. Your problem. So that was a lightning strike moment for me. And I think that that's largely why I ended up being, successful as an entrepreneur later on, because that was the first time in my life that it was very apparent to me, you're out on your own and you have to make this thing work, and you don't like what you're doing. So you better figure out what your passion is, and then you better make that passion work. And, I kind of go back to that in my mind a lot and say, that's why I put so much effort into this, because this is my last shot. Right. I didn't have there isn't too much more time, in other words. So
It's unbelievable. And then, but what you did, so you did that. So walk me through,
yep.
because obviously you're probably like, wow, I didn't know that. Got to put a plan together. Don't really have a job. And now what?
So that was maybe 3 years into my 5 year, because that's the standard, the SOP there at Drexel. It's 5 years. So I decided to keep with engineering, walked out the cap and gown, just pulled through it. Because I said, look, no one's going to say I'm an idiot when they interview me. Oh, you have engineering on your resume, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, I know I don't want to do that, and let's go and figure out what I want to do. And I sold pasta, actually, superior pasta in the Italian market. Two fellas bought the recipes from whoever the immigrant was that came over in the early 1900s, and they were going to roll out like Dunkin' Donuts, to roll out all these different stores, and you can buy fresh pasta. So I worked there, making $100 per week, until they finally said, you know what, we can't afford to pay you anymore. So can you keep on with us? I was selling prepaid calling cards, because I said, hey, let me get some sales experience. So I was going to little corner stores, North Philly, West Philly,
Yep.
the great neighborhoods if you're familiar, and bulletproof glass, the whole bit. But I did that even during college. Between that and a little bit of bartending I did and whatever. So anyway, that was I just was a grinder and a worker. That was always what I had going for me. So I just wanted to get these experiences. And then one day, a friend of mine who had graduated some years before said, Ian, if you don't know what to do, why don't you check out this financial planning stuff? And I work at this firm. Now he was a manager trying to recruit, so he brings me in, and I just said, hey, let's go for it. Like, what do I have to lose? I'm young, and I'm just, yeah, I'm not married. I don't have any risk really. Like, if I'm going to do this on 100% commission at the time, like, let's do it. Because I saw the trophies in the room, and if you want to make an
Sure.
unlimited amount of money and having all the time in the world to spend it, they don't tell you that you have to bust it for a long time.
You do.
But anyway, that was my story, and I started with a big firm, was there for 5 years, and then, one day I said, you know what, I want to do this for myself. And I was working alongside of another guy at one point who gave me a great opportunity to work with realtors, and he had all of Prudential Fox Roach at the time, PA, Jersey, Delaware, all this, and I kind of expanded that through some connections I had made to Remax, and we had the whole state of New Jersey for Remax, and great opportunity. And he said, Ian, we did it. And I said, well, look, I don't know if we did anything because we don't have an infrastructure for this. And this is kind of your thing, not mine. And I want to make sure that, we're putting money in infrastructure. So if I can't control it, I need some commitment from you, because this is a service business, man. And, I said, listen, if in 6 months we don't see a change here, like, I'm going to have to go a different way. And 6 months later, I was handing in my letter saying, unfortunately, I can't do this. And then I went over to the firm and I said to the president of the firm, look, thank you. Thank you. I know I've been on compete. I think I'm going to go my own. I can't, it's nothing with you guys. I just need to swing the bat for myself.
Right.
So I started all over again after 5 years in the business, because that was all the
No.
clients of the firm.
Sure.
Now,
That's painful.
that was 2003, and that's when I Am Wealth Partners was formed.
Wow. And then how? What was going through your head when you did that? Was it fear? Was it anxiety? Was it just like, let's do this?
Well, the first thing that went through my head, and this was, I guess, a week before when I finally decided I was going to do this, I went to my fiance at the time and I said, "Hey, we got to talk about something." I'm about to blow up my slash maybe our lives, and I am 100% confident it's going to work in my head, but reality may differ. And kudos to my now wife, for 20 years, by the way, that
Hmm.
she said, "Ian, I believe in you. I have no doubt that you will make this happen." Like, she was like, "I have 100% confidence about who you are."
Yeah.
And then I was very fortunate to have a very good mentor that gave me a place to like join and said, "Hey,
Yep.
listen, I'm not going to give you the fish, but I can teach you how more so."
Yeah.
And then it was just grind it out, grind it out, grind it out. And we just kind of just made it work. So yeah, there's definitely
Wow.
some pillars that I've lived by through that, but I mean, that was pretty much the story.
Um, and so let's go along that journey. You've done that and you get moving. And then you basically, like 2003, definitely the economy's getting better because 2001
Yes.
was real pretty tough. And then 2002 was, just getting back on the feet again. 2003, steady Betty and getting it moving. What did you learn like those first 2 years on your own?
So I was always a person who said, look, because of my experience growing up, and I had a wonderful experience. My parents worked all the time. I had a very Italian family. I saw my grandparents every day, right? So I had the benefit of having Depression era mentality and that
Mm,
hard work ethic and living for a world of scarcity, clearly, because they all did.
yeah.
And then I had my parents who were always out there, trying to make it happen and doing the best that they could, as far as that goes. So when I sat back and said, well, how do I want to do this? I literally said to myself, like, what do I want my life to look like?
Yeah.
And the one thing that I do feel that I had was vision. Even at
Hmm.
18 years old, I said, look, I think I can do something great. Like, let's think through this. If I want to get married and have children someday, like, let's play out these timelines. When do I want to be doing all this? I want to be taking the risk and really working hard now because I want to make it to their games. Like, I want to be
Right.
around and that type of thing. So that was something that I really took a lot of time and actually took a lot of time on paper and pencil back in the day. I mean, the computers weren't as big of a thing, and laid out these timelines and said, if I'm 88 years old and I'm on my deathbed and look backward, I better like what I see.
Hmm.
And I started walking it back and saying, well, wow, the time is now. Like, I really have to start doing that. And part of that included taking some risk,
Yeah.
right? So, one of the things I've always believed, and I believe it more so now than ever, is when I speak with my clients, and some of which are W 2, and maybe they want to start, the entertaining of let me open my own business, they think it's so risky.
Yeah.
And what I tell people is, look, the SBA, this is a stat on that for SBA, there's 33 million small business owners, which is defined by 500 employees or less in this country.
Hmm.
Do you think that all those people are way more brilliant than you and me? I
Right.
don't think so. That's a lot of really brilliant people. I mean, we're talking
It
like
is.
mentor society, if that's the case, right? I don't think so. I think the margin for error, I always say, you can run a truck through in this
Yes.
country to start a business. And our minds always go to this ultimate worst case scenario, like, what if I fail? And I just, maybe I was too young, or maybe I just had too much confidence and said, look, I'm going to bet on myself. And that's all I thought about. And if
Yep.
it is to be, it's up to me. Let's make this thing work.
Yep.
And, as long as you're willing to put in the time, and I'll get into that in a bit here, because I think that's definitely one of the things that I got right. It's going to work.
But it's a lot to go off. I call it basically going off the diving board, right? And people are like, "What if I fail?" Well, guess what? We all failed at something. And so, can you walk us through an experience that you had, especially first 2 years, that just didn't go your way, and you
Yep.
said, "Maybe I shouldn't be here."
Yeah. So listen, as I said, with my story, I had like 300-ish clients, and I was
Mm-hmm.
making pretty good money. I mean, I was 20, what, 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
I was making, well into six figures, and like doing well. And all of a sudden, it was like, wow, I'm gonna like let all that go, because if you leave your clients behind. So I will say that the principal of the firm at the time, when I sat back, when I told him, hey, I'm leaving, and I told him, hey, listen, I know I have a non-compete. And I said, look, I typed up 20 names, David, and I kind of put it in front of him. And I said, look, these are 20 names that if I could respectfully get your permission to take with me, these are like my key relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you can absolutely say no. I signed the document. I get it. I said, but I'm just respectfully asking. And he sat down and he looked at it, and he looks up at me. He looks down. Of course, I'm young and I'm nervous, so I'm start talking, trying to fill the space. And he puts up
Sure.
his hand. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Ian, stop talking." I said, "Okay." He said, "The reason why I'm pausing is because no one has ever come in here and asked. They always try to steal clients." He said, "You can take these people." So that to me was like, all right, I did the right
Oh,
thing, like my mom
it's
always
huge.
taught me, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So then I
Yeah.
get there, and then I started questioning and saying, wow, I have 20 clients. Who am I even going to call? Like, did I make a big mistake?
Right.
And, I sat there and just put in a lot of time and effort just trying to like make it happen. And, probably earlier on, I should have focused more on creating centers of influence rather than just going client to client. Like
Yes.
in all of our businesses, there are probably 3, 4 people that you could go out and meet over the next year who could
Right.
change the entire face of the future of your business.
Right.
And although I kind of knew that a little bit, I didn't really trust it enough. So I was focused on trying to get a client to refer another client because I'm in a word of mouth business. And because of that, I probably didn't key in on those key relationships enough. And probably,
Mm.
frankly, I didn't have the confidence at the time.
Oh,
I'm a young guy, baby face, walk in, and are they going to trust me? And oh yeah, Mr. Attorney, you're going to trust me with your client that's worth $3 million, and this kid's 24 years old and was just born yesterday, kind of thing. So
yeah.
that
That's
was
the hard
definitely a
part.
mistake that I should have had a little more confidence earlier on, and gone and done that.
I think that's one of the biggest things I hear with people. I know for me, if I had the confidence I had today, oh my God, watch that world. Because I would have done so many different things in my 20s, for sure. And not be so afraid of what people think or whatever. You're just so worried about all that stuff. And you realize, like, what was I even worried about?
Yep.
But unfortunately, you have it in your head. And then basically, here you are, you're moving, you're grooving, you take your clients, you keep things going, and then what happens?
So I was just in a grinded out mentality. Like I said earlier, like the good thing about my upbringing is that it definitely taught me how to work.
Yep.
So I definitely wanted to make sure on this podcast that we talk a little bit about work ethic, because if anyone out there is looking to start a business, my whole thing is, first of all, you got to find something you're passionate about. And
Yes.
it's not always going to be easy. I mean, Marcia,
Yep.
I'm sure you've had many days, you still have them, right? But if
Oh,
you are
yeah.
passionate about it and that becomes your mission, then that'll pull you through those tough days, right?
Correct.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
the second thing I would say is, find in that passion, like what your why is. So I'm a huge Simon Sinek fan. When you
Yep.
start talking about like what things I read, I remember came on to some Simon Sinek stuff in probably like the mid 2000s. Like no
Mm-hmm.
one even heard of Simon Sinek. And
I
I
know,
thought this was
right?
the greatest thing that I've ever seen. It was a YouTube video. I was there like Sunday morning watching this thing, and I'm telling everybody I know about it because this was awesome. Then after you get your why, then I'm a big sports fan, so I would definitely advise anyone, if you haven't heard Kobe Bryant interviews about like his crazy work ethic.
Crazy.
Jordan's the GOAT, I must say. I'm of the genre where Jordan's always going to be the GOAT to me, but Kobe wasn't too bad. Um, and like, listen, as soon as I heard Kobe stuff, I said, I totally get this guy.
Yeah.
And if you just walk through some of the things that he did, and this is ironically the same exact path, he said, look, if I get up before everyone's willing, I'm going to get in that much more work. So where they have 2 workouts a day, I'm going to have 3.
Yeah.
And you can't catch me, because if I'm going to be practicing intently, right? Because that's what
Yep.
the outliers, right? You mean Malcolm Gladwell stuff,
Yep.
10,000 hours of intensive practice. You
10,000.
can't be beat.
Right.
So listen, I would challenge all of you business owners out there. I mean, the math goes like this, right? There's 2,080 working hours in a year if you're a 40-hour week person. I would like to think that if you're an entrepreneur, you're at least working 50. So that's 10 more hours a week. So that gets you up to an extra 520 hours a year.
Yep.
Then on top of that, if you're willing, Saturdays and Sundays, I know people cringe. I get up 4:35 every morning, get in the office for 4 hours. I can still be home by the time my family's up and moving, so I'm not really missing out on much. That gets you an extra 416 hours a year if you can do 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday. And I would
Mm-hmm.
argue that those 4 hours on Saturday and Sunday, because there are no incoming emails and there are no incoming phone calls, you will get twice as much done. But you start doing the math on that, and over a 10-year span, you've really worked just shy of 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you make that happen? You can work 15 years in every 10-year span if you just are willing to do that, and it's really not that hard. And I know it becomes a habit, right? Once it becomes a
Yeah.
habit, you're set.
You're
So
set.
I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's pretty much it. I try to teach my kids that. We'll see if they listen.
Well, I love how you put the numbers into the numbers because that's what you do is numbers. But I'm the same way. I probably drive my team nuts here because I'm very much into operations and my metrics and my numbers, and and I could tell. Advantage just they tell you the story kind of a thing, and I'm a big believer in that. So,
Yep.
where did you know that you had to bring people on board?
So you mentioned some things that maybe I didn't do well. I still feel like I'm not great at this about, if the pipe's yay big and you can fit so much water through it, well, how do you fit
Hmm.
more water through the pipe? You have to get a bigger pipe, right? Because the water's not going to condense.
True.
Capacity, right?
Hmm.
We are now still trying to hire, but I feel like another like flaw in my whole plan here was I should have probably hired some people earlier on, especially some people who were more my contemporary or my peer.
Yes. Agreed.
So that's definitely, and you listen, once again, it probably came down to confidence because, in your mind, you're committing to that payroll, but you don't know if
Yep.
you're going to get the result as a result. Are you going to get additional revenue per employee? I mean,
Yeah.
now I'm confident in that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess my first employee, I was probably like a year in. I knew I needed
Yep.
an assistant, and then kind of went from from thing to thing to thing, and then you say, well, who's going to manage these people? So that's another issue. You have a lot of
Yes.
people running around, but yeah, I was pretty. I hired people earlier. I could have probably built more of a team earlier. There's a guy in my business that I met some years later, and he said, Ian, you know what I think? I think that everyone in this business should be required to take a loan out for $100,000 their first year. And the only thing you can do with that loan is go out and hire a team,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're from scratch. Because you know what it'll do? You'll be successful. It'll force you to. It'll force you to make sure that you out earn that problem. And because you have a team, you're probably going to be better off because of it. I thought that was a really interesting concept. Like just put yourself on the hook up front. If you can.
Yeah, it's interesting. It took me 3 years to hire my first full time person, and I was nervous, Nellie, and thank God she's still with me to this day. But I feel like that was really hard because she left a full time paying job with benefits. I didn't even have benefits. I was like, yeah, well, just stick with me. We'll have them one day, and now we have them. But we took a few years to do all that because people think automatically like all this stuff just pops on. And I'm like, no, I was pretty frugal the first few years, but I had to do that to pay the bills and pay the consultants that I needed to work for. And off you went, But it's fascinating when you look back at it now. You're like, wow, did that all really happen? And it's pretty cool stuff. But you learn from it. You learn basically what you did. Have you ever had a bad hire?
Oh, ever. How many people are going to see this? Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, the old like hire slowly and fire quickly. I mean, all of us are all of us do the opposite, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I love people and I want people to work and I want it to work and I want to help you and coach you. And that's part of like, I don't know, I guess my ego that says like, listen, I'm a failure if I can coach you up enough. So
Right.
yeah, of course, I've made some bad decisions and, my wife will tell you that, and she's a much better at women's intuition gut check. So
Mm-hmm.
now I run everything by her and she'll be like, I
Good.
know, you just want to know if I like the guy, like if I trust him, right? So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, totally. I would say that, a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, are just so, we make bad picks, right? So that's
Oh,
why we
we
use
want.
firms like you guys today to help us vet some of those people
Yeah.
because
Good answer, Ian.
yes, and
And
so far
we
so
make
good.
mistakes ourselves. I mean, we just do because, like, as an entrepreneur, I want to fit I want to fix the problem, and fast. And I'm just like, yeah, we'll make it work. And then how many times does that backfire on me because I didn't take my time? So, it's we all go through it. Even the ones who are experts in it, it happens all over the place for sure. Um,
I will
so
say
tell
on
me.
that note, real quick, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what people use systems wise, but find a system. Like we happen to use EOS, and one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that EOS starts with, as you know, is the core values. And if you
Yeah.
can come up with and get clear on your core values and use that as a hiring mechanism, and unfortunately, sometimes a firing mechanism, you're
Yeah.
going to be light years ahead. And I did learn that the hard way, but I learned it.
Yeah, the GWC. Do you get it? Do you want it? Do you have the capacity? And it's
Amen.
really that simple. And I can't tell you how many times we'll go through that when people, and do they get it? They get it. Do they want it? Not so sure. Do they have capacity? Yeah, but they gotta want it. And if you don't have those three, then find somebody new for that role because you're trying to make it fit, and it's never going to fit.
And
And
everybody
that's
puts their Sunday
ridiculous.
best on for the interviews, right? I mean, they all
Always. They tell
anything
you
you
whatever
want,
they want to
they're it,
hear.
right? Yeah.
God. And I'm
Yep.
just like when they show up, you're like, who is this person? I don't remember calling this person. Like, where did this come from? But we've all been there, and that's an entrepreneur's thing. No matter how much you beat yourself on the head, you have to be okay with you're going to make mistakes for sure.
Sure.
Which is what. When did you first get your office?
So this was a good point. When I left the big firm and I joined that
Mm-hmm.
mentor, we had a little crappy office, Jeffersonville, PA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not kidding. And we laugh about it now. Sometimes we go out for happy hour with some of my legacy employees and we just laugh because, I mean, one day I was like, why is it so cold in here? And realized that there was a space underneath the door, which was like a racetrack for air. And also, I mean, there would be mice running through, like literally, they wouldn't even break stride. I would see them running through the thing, or there was we needed pest control. I mean, it was crazy, but it was cheap. So I had my own office. I mean, we were shoehorned in there. I mean, we had three people in this space, so that was maybe like I don't know, 100 square feet. I mean, really shoehorned, but that's where we were, and we just packed it in, packed it in. And then finally, 2015 was a big year for me because going back to my upbringing and that world of scarcity, like don't fail, don't fail. You have to make this work. At some point, I said, you know what? I have to rip the band-aid if I want to truly be successful, excuse me, and go to a world of plenty and get out of a world of scarcity.
Yeah.
So one of those things was, hey, let's go get a bigger office. I didn't have the
Yeah.
need for as big of an office as I had, but I needed the
Sure.
capacity there if I'm going to sign a 10-year lease to then fill. So yeah, 2015, and crazy enough, as we look at the calendar, I mean, I almost have to re-up my lease soon. So it goes by
Yeah.
quick. It
It,
goes.
it does, but at the time you're freaking out because you're like, will I be here? Will this happen? Will I fill it up? And funny thing is, I found there's a correlation when you do get a place like that, and it's nice. People want to be there, want to be involved, and I'm starting to see people come back into the office too. So I'm excited to see that, but not everybody. We're still like it's like half and half right now, so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And I think you make it a good point. Make it a place where people feel comfortable. I mean, we have
Yeah.
carry coffee machines for people. I mean, nothing crazy expensive, but just like make it comfortable. So we have a refrigerator and a kitchen and all the things that they want to have, right? It's not, so if they're comfortable, they want to stick around a little bit.
Yeah, it's really crazy. What's worked well for you? What have you learned as successes?
Talked about passion. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't say that enough. Like really find something you're passionate about, and thank
Yep.
God I did. I'm very thankful for that. I mean, probably above all else, the work ethic thing. Being willing to put that in and create a habit. Habits good, habits bad. Well, good habits die hard too. So I think that that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that um, one of the things that really has helped is that I've learned over time, whether it's my children, people you work with, clients, whatever, it seems like everyone likes to put things through like a hard, easy filter when something comes
Mm-hmm.
up. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously. So my philosophy is that, okay, I hear that I have to go out and cut the grass.
Mm-hmm.
My brain immediately says, is that hard for me or is that easy for me? It doesn't mean it's always physically hard or mentally hard. It might just be hard because I don't like it. But then after I go put it through that filter, I'm like, ugh, but if it's something like, hey, let's go to happy hour, of course that's easy. So like I gravitate to that. So one of the things that I've really taught myself over time is I said, look, Ian, don't put it through the hard easy filter. A thing is a thing, whether it's hard or
Mm-hmm.
it's easy. It's going to take you the required amount of time, an hour or a
Yep.
half hour, and just go do it. Because at the end of that half hour, whatever the time elapsed is, you'll be done. So like why go through all these mental gymnastics and the spiral downward and psych yourself out? Because I feel like that's an impediment to so many entrepreneurs, whether it be starting a business all the way through running a business. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have this conversation with the employer. I don't want to pick up the phone and call that client you know, and as I always say at the end of the day, it's usually never as bad as you thought it was or as good as you thought it could be. It's always somewhere in the middle. Like likely it's not some disastrous outcome, right? So just do it. I'm really big about just do it. And if you just start walking in that direction and things work out, so
Yeah,
take away the
it's
hard easy.
it is, but I don't think sometimes people want to do that or know that they're so afraid of failure. What do you would suggest for like an entrepreneur to get rid of that fear of failure?
I think the first thing you do is look back at your history and say, look how far you've come. I mean, give yourself some credit, right? You've gotten to this point, and there has, for most people, I mean, maybe they made some mistakes, but what did you learn? Or maybe
Right.
I made some great decisions and look at where I am. I mean, again, there's 33 million entrepreneurs, and if you're one of them, guess what? There's 300 and change million in the country. So you are in the rare minority. Like you've done something special already. So give yourself
Yeah.
some credit, and just keep on going. I mean, it's not. It just take away all that and say, look, as if I get through this thing, maybe I'll have a reward for myself, or maybe the reward is that I just kept on moving. So I think it's that simple. I think people like overcomplicate this thing tremendously.
Oh, oh my God, do they ever? And you just have to keep on going for it. And people are like, "How do you keep on going?" I said, "Well, the thing is, your days are so busy that Saturday comes like that, and then Monday comes, and next thing you know, it's like the next year. I can't believe I just pulled off my little calendar thing for April, and you're like, yeah, don't worry about being busy." And it's so funny when Janice was my first hire, and one of her biggest fears was she's like, "So I'm gonna have enough work to do, right? You're gonna keep me busy, right?" I'm like,
How'd that work out?
"Yeah, I'm gonna pretty good." So to this day, she's like, "Yeah." So she tells all the new hires, she's like, "So Marcia," I asked, my only question to Marcia was like, "Are you gonna keep me busy enough?" She's like, "Guys, I have never not been busy the entire 13 years here, and it's always been something else." And I said to him, like, "Well, watch what you wish for around here, you know." But I also look for the people who are the doers and the shakers and the movers, and who want to go outside that side and be like, "What is it? How are you going to do it? How do you think you want to fix it?" And I rarely say no to that, but I do find that entrepreneur is not for the faint. You have to be okay with the extra and going above and being that fixer and that grinder, but it can be a lot of fun. I think it is.
Yeah, and
So
I think going to 4-year college or whatever we all a lot of us did, right? I mean, you start to get inside the box, I call it, where it's
yeah,
like, oh, well, you work early in the morning or whatever time on Monday all the way through
yeah,
Friday. But when I say to entrepreneurs like, hey, what are you doing on the weekends? And they look at me crazy. I mean, I think there's just too many rules. Like, don't like a day is a day. Like, let's just
yeah,
get it done. And guess what? That also means that you might be able to take off on Monday, but
right,
try to push through that. Going back to the employee thing, you got to love your employees. You're not going to truly love them, but I mean, you have to
yeah,
love on them and say, look, I care about you as a person. And I
yeah,
think that if you can do that repeatedly and show that you're going to stick up for them, then you'll get their loyalty. We have a philosophy around here where, like, the first and foremost, the employee is the number one in line, and then
mm-hmm,
after that's the client. And I know some people might balk at that. Say, well, what do you mean your client's not number one? I say, look, if my client's number one and my employee's number two, you're not going to feel good as a client. I
never,
really do really believe that. Like, I want my employees to know, like, look, you have the leeway to make a mistake.
yeah,
If you screw something up, that's okay. It's all about the next play. So
yeah,
come to me and let me know so I'm aware. So if I know damage control, or maybe I don't like step in something I didn't realize was there,
mm-hmm,
but give them some autonomy. I tell everybody here, like, we love self starters. If you have an
yeah,
idea, throw it out there. If you have a position that doesn't exist and you want it, go and
yeah,
create it. We'll backfill. Like, I'll just ask for your help to backfill your position. I mean, you can go as far as you want, because I don't have a monopoly on all the great ideas. That's for sure.
right. Oh yeah,
So,
I don't think I do either for sure, but it's interesting to see how you go. But if you're out employees, like you just gotta take care of them. It's the smallest little things. It's saying thank you. It's sending a message off to them. I feel like I do a lot of that, but my team does it too. So, you just want to make sure that you support and take care of your team, because without that, it flows right down to the clients, and the clients are like, wow, your
yes.
people are great. It's just like this full circle, and I think we do a really good job of it. But it just it doesn't come overnight. It doesn't. It's like it's just not like, oh, it just shows up. I'm like, it's like a garden. You gotta constantly water it and take care of it. So
And when it's
pretty
5
amazing.
o'clock on a Friday and that client needs something, are you gonna have employees that are gonna be like booking it out the door and say, it can wait till Monday? Or are you gonna have
Yeah,
people who say, you know what, let me give this guy or this gal a call back for 15 minutes and just knock this out because we'll all be happy. I mean,
yeah,
that's what you want to, and it goes a long way, that loyalty, if
it
you can
does. My
cultivate that
God,
out of employees.
totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. So what's next for I Am Wealth?
So I think about that a lot, Marcia. Listen, I am so fortunate. I really feel like I kind of already outkicked my coverage. I did always believe in myself, and I'm glad my wife
Right.
believed in me maybe more than I did. And I know that the level of where I've gotten in this business is at a very high level, and I'm excited about the future because I think we're just getting started, and I have
Mm-hmm.
all these ideas that we have so much business, which is why we're trying to get so much capacity, so that I can actually implement those ideas. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I have marketing ideas, and we have different planning ideas and different services that I think we can roll out to clients and say, wow, what if we could do this? And everybody's like, Ian, well, where are we going to fit that? Like, we have to,
Yeah.
so I have some good temperament around here as far as, tamping down my expectations. But, listen, our first goal is to get to $1 billion with a B in assets under management as like a business goal of ours.
Yeah.
Um, I think that the world is continuing to change, and in my
Yeah.
world, it's no different. So I think that the look of how our business looks today is going to change Probably in the future, people are going to want to write more checks for the advice of it,
Yeah.
not just to pay to have someone manage their money.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you price that model? Who's your client? We're doing more and more of that every single year because that's one of our options for clients. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I think it's a really exciting time. The one thing I don't believe is going to happen is that machines are going to, in my career, I don't think machines are going to take over, because that's a big worry in lots of businesses, including mine, that Ian, you're going to become obsolete. Like, no one's going to want to need or talk to an advisor. But the complexities of putting together, especially how we work our model, which I would love to share with you, um, machines can't do that. It's way too
No.
complex and complicated, and they don't understand the human psyche, right?
Mm.
Because a
I
lot of
know.
money issues are very emotional.
Extremely emotional. And there's a book out there called The Psychology of Money. And I was told that the first 5 years of your life, you've been pretty much programmed already of how you're going to deal with money the rest of your life. And
Mm.
it's really interesting to see that. But there's a local author named Maggie Baker who wrote that book, and she did this whole like a whole book around it. It was really interesting stats behind it, and especially for females in particular.
Yeah.
So, because females will not always, but sometimes they outlive their spouses, and so it's pretty fascinating to see where that's going. I know we're running a little over time, but just want to make sure, like, if you had to give one word, one statement advice to an entrepreneur, what would that be?
I would say believe in yourself. You can do it. I
Right.
hear, well, again, clients, just because I meet so many people and we're talking about these things, like, Ian, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, listen, just try it. Like, there's nothing permanent about the decision. If you try
Mm-hmm.
it and it doesn't work, you can always rewind it. It's okay.
Yeah.
But our brains, again, go hard easy, and then the next thing they say is, oh, this must be a permanent thing, and now
Yeah.
what happens, what if? So just do it. I mean, like Nike says, right? That's why they came up with the slogan, like, let's take away all this filter and all this overthinking. Just do it. That's the one thing I would say. Get good advice, do your homework. I mean, don't just,
Yeah.
look before you leap, in other words. But
Right. Always, always. And then, how about in regards to, like, I always ask this question too. Do you do Audible or do you read an old-fashioned book?
so just because I have so limited time, and when I'm in the car or I'm doing whatever I'm doing, working out, like, I am
Mm-hmm.
more getting into the audio books. I mean, I do have my Kindle, so I'll sit on the beach and read that because I do like to read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big note taker, so that's the one thing
Okay.
I like about using a Kindle. I can write my little notes and do those type of things. But both, I think, however you can consume it. Blinkist, I mean, not to I have no vested interest in Blinkist, but if you haven't heard of it, go check it out because it's awesome. And you can put
Yeah.
it on 2 times the speed, 3 times the speed. I mean, it sounds like a chipmunk, but you can just rip through things quickly, and they're little, like, summary type things, which that's what I'll often do first before I go and read a book because it's on the time, right?
Oh yeah, I do. I'm an Audible fan, so I'm just trying to keep up with my credits right now. But it's just about trying to get to see what's happening. I'm reading a really cool book too about it's called "The Future is Faster Than You Think," and it's really good talking about where we're going in the future of all the technology that's happening right now, right
Yep.
here, that is going to change in so many things, and we're just on the cusp of that happening. And where you're going to see within like 10 years, there's so many changes, and it's really pretty cool to see. I like being on top of the trends because with HR and recruiting, where are our services going to be needed, and so I'm always looking like 5 to 10 years on the road what that looks like. So
Well,
it's pretty cool
AI, I
stuff.
mean, all this chat GPT stuff, I mean, it's insane. I don't know if you've messed around with that much, but
Ah,
I encourage
I live
everybody
on
to.
it now.
It's
I love
crazy,
it. You
crazy.
kidding? They write well. How should I say this? I want to say it out there, but they do write job descriptions, by the way, people. But they have to understand what Chat GPT does, and then there's all different add-ons and all too that are coming out. But really
Yep.
get to learn how to use it to your advantage because it can save you a lot of time. It doesn't have to replace people, but it definitely can save you some time out there instead of doing your own research, which is pretty cool. Um, how do people get a hold of you, Anne?
Sure. Do you mind if I give you a little money advice for your entrepreneurs real quick before we get into that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This I won't take too long, I promise.
No, I love it.
One of the things that I did early in my career, which was a definite positive, and it's literally counter to everything that people who see me would think I would say. When you first start your business, it's all hands on deck. Your business is your investment. I wouldn't worry about saving into a 401k. I wouldn't worry about investing in the stock market even. What I would worry about is make sure that you are making enough money to live, saving off to the side somewhere. It could be in a money market today making 4%, and make sure that you feel comfortable with your bank account, your reserves, so that you can go and take risk in your business. And then once that builds up and you feel comfortable, then reinvest in your business and get a person or buy that location or whatever the machinery. I don't know what your business is, right? But
Hmm.
do all that to get the engine started. But annually go back and say, is this the year I should start my 401 and my IRA and my savings and my investment plan, or should I defer it one more? Because all of you, if you're successful entrepreneurs, you pick the business that the business is going to give you a rate of return on your investment that no stock market or real estate or anything can ever trump. But I call them shiny new objects, right?
Yes.
Your friend says, hey, maybe you should be doing that, or I heard the podcast on this, or Ian mentioned that, and all of a sudden maybe now I'm gold diffused. Like, don't be gold diffused in the beginning, and that first 5 years, maybe even just, you should be full throttle trying to get that plane off the ground, and that does require all the capital and all that. But keep your life simple. Like, don't think about it. After that, then yes, invest in all those different things, and I think that's huge. Get a team of advisors. Taxes are the biggest bill of your life, period, end of story. There's no bigger bill you will pay. Mortgage interest is not that large. Nothing's that large. So get a great accounting person who's willing to grow with you and give you great advice. Get people around you. I mean, wealthy people, usually when you're $100 million or more, you're in a family office. Try to create, and that's what we do as a company with our financial concierge. It's a virtual family office for entrepreneurs who maybe aren't worth 100 million yet, because it's really how all these things talk to each other: the legal,
Yep.
the tax, the investment, the business advice, all of those things. So I highly encourage you. And that, once again, to start out and say, wait a minute, Ian told me don't put my money in my 401k. You don't. If you're starting a business, that should be your investment in the beginning. I believe that. It served me very well. And, I have tons of investments, but that's because I put all my business in the beginning, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
there's my
Well,
2 cents on that.
no, it's great. I think because you started pretty much, really young. I started when I was 39, so I had a 401k and I just kept it. But I'll be honest with you, I had to use it when 2009 hit, and things were really tight. The faucet was turned off, and I had to figure out what to do, and I did, and I swore I'd pay it back, and I did, and I didn't worry about a 401k for my team for a while. I had to put, we had to make sure we had enough reserves, and those reserves really helped me during COVID time periods and all too. And I try to tell people always, always, always have reserves, and how much time is payroll, which is at one of my stats on my metrics for my EOS. And,
Mhm.
but I don't think people do that enough. They want to spend and spend, and they use all of their stuff that they have, and they have too high of a debt. And then when things get bad, it gets crunched, and then they get massive panic attacks. So, you don't need the flashy car. You don't need the massive office. I would tell people for years that my office was under construction because they didn't have one. But they didn't need to know that. And, or my husband would say, who's your team? And I said, me, myself, and I. Nobody needs to know that. But that client needs to know that I'm spending time just on them. And so
Mm.
I had to tell them I had a team. But, it's the things that you do when you first start off, right? But
Yeah, you got to fake
can't
it till you
complain.
make it a little bit, right?
You got that right. So too fun.
Got it.
So, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, if there's anything that I said that would spark your interest, that you wanted to talk with us, or whether it be myself or someone on my team, or maybe you just had a question. I mean, we are always willing to help anyone if we can. So I would reach out. You can reach out to me. I'm Ian, which is IAN at I Am Wealth Partners. You can see it on behind my background, the letter I, letter M for my first and last initial, wealthpartnersplural.com. You can also reach out to schedule, which is the word schedule at I Am Wealth Partners. That goes right to Nikki. But that's an easy way. Or if you want to call me, 610-650-1848 is our phone
It's
number.
awesome. Ian, thank you so much today being on the show. That was such
Thank
great
you.
information, good advice, a lot of fun, and out there for our listeners and all. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. And with that, that's another wrap of another amazing issue here at Top 3, where entrepreneurs share their secrets and their mistakes. And until next time, enjoy it out there, have fun, don't be so hard on yourself, and reach out to any one of us. We're here to help you. All right, take care,
Absolutely.
guys.